Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome to our online Kashmir Cultural Heritage Awareness Series. Today is our 77th and our book review session by Srimati Rohini Vaishnavi. She'll be speaking with the author, Dr. Rahul Magazine. We begin with our prayer by Krishna Veni. Veni ji has appeared many times in our series, rendering Sanskrit shlokas. She is a student of Dr. Harini Srivatsa. Veni?
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. I am going to render Slokam 71 from Shivananda Lagari. आरूढ भक्ति गुण कुंजित भावचाप युक्तै शिव स्मरण बाणगणैरमोघैः निर्जित्य किल्बिषरिपून् विजयी सुधीन्द्रः सानन्दमावहति सुस्थिरराजलक्ष्मी कल्याणिनां सरसचित्तगतिं सवेगम् सर्वेङ्गितज्ञमनघम् ध्रुवलक्षणाट्यम् चेतस्तुरङ्गमधिरूह्य चरस्मरारे नेतः समस्त जगतां वृषभाधिरूढ.
Thank you, Veni ji. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah.
We thank Sri Kanchi Mutt for our ongoing Kashmir initiatives and offer our namaskarams to His Holiness Sri Shankara Vijayendra Saraswati Swamigal. Kanchi Mutt is always in the forefront, modestly working with the sole aim of national integration, spiritual enlightenment, and preserving the uniqueness of Kashmir, as Kashmir is our cultural heritage. We are now very pleased to welcome Dr. Rahul ji and Rohini ji for our book review sessions. She has done 5 book reviews so far. These book reviews on Kashmir are equally important as these are well researched and written. Dr. Rahul also appeared in our program earlier on ethnic cleansing and cultural genocide of Kashmiri Hindus. I would request Srimati Rohini ji to introduce Dr. Rahul Magazine and take over. I will join towards the end with my
Namaskar.
concluding remarks. Namaskar ji.
Namaskar, Mr. Shankar, and Namaskar, Dr. Rahul.
Namaskar,
A
madam.
very good evening. A very good evening, and Namaskar to all our audience. I'm very happy to be here once again on our 6th book review on Kashmir Culture Awareness Series. And I'm very thankful to Kanchi Mutt and His Holiness for providing this platform. Today, we are going to talk about a very important book written by Dr. Rahul Magazine, And the Valley Remained Silent. Before we go ahead with the discussion, I would give our audience a brief description about Dr. Magazine. He was born in Kashmir, from where he did his schooling from Srinagar's reputed Catholic Burnhall School. In 1990, his family had to leave behind their ancestral home and move to Jammu due to the atmosphere of terror in the valley. After getting trained in modern medicine and completing 2 post graduations, he joined one of the most renowned private medical colleges in India. At present, he is working as professor of respiratory medicine and has published many research papers in national and international journals. He has devised technical maneuvers such as magazine's air splinting maneuver and magazine's head rotation maneuver used during chest endoscopy. He has also published articles on philosophy, religion, and history in various acclaimed magazines. His book, And the Valley Remained Silent, is a non-fiction which comprises of the real life experiences and testimonials from the survivors of the genocide. These are the ordinary people who once lived in the valley. The book elaborates on the social conditions in Kashmir many decades before the final mass exodus of 1990, the conditions which built over time and resulted in the genocide. Dr. Magazine has, through this book, very beautifully highlighted the factors other than the bullets, which can bring about the gradual ethnic cleansing of a community over decades. In this book, you can expect to read real life accounts of people in their day to day life which suppressed their identity over many decades. Now, why is this book important? I have myself come across many people who are still shocked and surprised about how a community can become a refugee in their own country and yet no one knows about it. In fact, I was recently asked by a very high profile media person, why is it that no one ever talked about this when so much has happened? This question was a surprise to me, coming from a media stalwart who was very much active nationally in the decades of 90s with a leading media house. Kashmiri Pandits themselves took many decades to sit back and write about what they went through. The reason is obvious. When we were forced to leave Kashmir, that was a time when we were all crumbling, and the challenge was to first put our feet on the ground. This whole process took several decades before Kashmiri Pandits could become their own voice. Unfortunately, when all this was happening in early 90s, the media was silent. This long gap in between and the silence of media encouraged various false narratives, and none of them was written from the perspective of Kashmiri Pandits themselves, who were the victims and the witnesses of the genocide. One such book was written by Humra Qureshi that highlights the sufferings and pain of those who are now jailed for perpetrating violence, and they are known terrorists. In her book, she has several times asked this question: we don't know why Kashmiri Pandits left. That's a mystery. And thankfully, she did not blame it on Mr. Jagmohan. She left it open ended. I met her once in a lit fest in Bangalore and I asked her, since you've done so much research about Kashmir, it's quite surprising that you have no clue about the reasons behind the exodus of Pandits. And she obviously avoided answering. Such were the narrative. Dr. Magazine was 17 when he left the valley, along with his family due to violence. He and his family are the survivors of the genocide. His book is very important because it brings out the correct narrative about the genocide, more because it's based on the real experiences of very ordinary inhabitants of Kashmir Valley. So, my first question to you, Dr. Rahul, is what was the source of the data required for this book? And what was your research methodology?
Yeah. So, so writing such a book, one has to be very rigorous in one's research and collection of data. So, as you mentioned, the source, most of the 90% of the source is first-hand accounts of people who, were born and grew up in Kashmir and saw, what happened before, little bit before independence and after independence, and so that is 90% of the material. Rest of the 5 to 10% comes from sources which I have referenced in the book, from various magazines like Nath magazine, then our esteemed governor Sri Jagmohan's seminal work. So those were the sources. So far as the research methodology is concerned, since I have a background of around 20 years of medical research, so I am well versed with the well versed with the fact that when you are writing a non-fiction, it has to be spot on, and your research has to be rigorous. You have to cross check, recheck, again check your references, your dates. So when, let us say, I'll give you an example from the book. When I was um, interviewing one of the eyewitnesses, he gave me uh, the date of his exodus from the valley, and then he said it was after the infamous BK Ganju drum killing. So I went back and checked the dates, and then the two dates didn't match. So such things I had to revise and get back to the eyewitness and tell them. And then see, 32 years have passed, so exact dates people won't know. They may know remember their
Right.
own date when they left, because that was a
Yes.
it was a very important event in their lives, which it was a watershed event for them, but they may not
Right.
know remember the events around them. So what I basically did was, using already established dates of key events like Justice Ganju's killing, Tikal Altapluji's killing, Lasakolji's gruesome murder, and many such events, I formed a grid. So those were the reference points, and those dates are very clear without any doubt. And
Hmm.
then going back to the eyewitnesses, I asked them, so because a lot of material is from 89, 90, so I would go back and ask them, when this event which you are mentioning happened, when was it? So they would say it was, in July, December, whatever. So I would put
Hmm.
that, using the previous grid, I would put that event, even if I may not mention the date of that eyewitnesses, that event, but I would put it
Hmm.
in a chronological manner so that it fits in around these important dates, which most of
Hmm.
the people who are there are aware of. Many outside Kashmir may not be aware of those killings and those dates, but most of us are aware when those things happened. So that was how I basically went, and that was regarding making sure that what the eyewitnesses are saying is corroborated by other data. And then also there was like some killings and molestations, rapes happened, and the dates were conflicting. If you saw newspapers from net, they mentioned one date, 1 or 2 days before or after, and I took other sources, magazines where the victims' family members have told. So there were some conflict. So
Hmm.
in those cases, I have only mentioned the month, because see, when the killing happened, people were not interested in knowing the date. Even FIRs were not filed in many cases. We know how the administration was
Hmm.
totally had collapsed.
Collapse.
So newspapers mentioned one date, whereas the killings may have happened prior. So there was a lot of chaos there. That itself reflects the state of affairs of the administration. That they couldn't even get the dates correct. So
Right.
in such cases, I mentioned the month, because month was by and large in all the. So some of the exact dates I just skipped, because I didn't want any confusion to arise.
Right. So that was about the dates, but you who did you speak to about when you were collecting the data?
Yeah.
What was
So
also important is the kind of details that you have presented other than the dates.
yes.
Who were
So
your
I was
sources?
yes. So I was 17. So many of the things I have mentioned also about before, like around 47 and afterwards. So I wouldn't know that without the help of elders in the community.
Right.
So first person I approached was my father. It was COVID first lockdown. So I approached my father and I said, "You just write down." So he wrote a lot of material, and then I culled the things from that and put some of the material in this book. Then my mother, then many relatives, then
Right.
friends of relatives, friends of friends, and then some people whom I managed to contact through Facebook or other sources. So it was by and large from contacts whom I knew, but some from through social media also I got, like
Right.
Sushma Shalaji's case, Chunilal Shalaji's gruesome murder.
Yes.
I came to know. I mean, we know about it. It was mentioned in Nad magazine also. I quoted that, but she put a video on the Facebook. So when after seeing that video, I contacted her and took her permission to write down. So then I
Right.
would send all the eyewitnesses the emails with the manuscript, and they would cross check. So a couple of times I did that, so that we were on the same page regarding the details.
So basically, the book is based on the people who have actually been the witness to this and who have actually gone through this. That's what makes it very authentic, and it's a commendable work, because as the time goes by and the people who have been the witness to this, they are no more. It becomes all the more important for our coming generations to know what exactly happened. uh, my second question to you is, there is a myth that poverty led to unemployment in Kashmir, which in turn led to people picking up the guns. In fact, I myself remember having read Times of India in 1989 when I was in school. There were statistics on the front page about the state-wise rankings of Indian states according to their economic well-being. The topmost being the most well-off state, and the state that was topmost on that list was JNK. And you also, in some way or the other, touched upon this in your book. So, what do you have to say about that?
See, this explanation for terrorism that it stems from poverty and economic hardship is actually apologetic. The apologists are using this because they want to cover something else. What they want to conceal the real reason for this uprising, or I won't say even uprising, for this terror. And we all know, no, because when we would read, as you were shocked to read what you saw in the newspaper, we were, and you, I'm sure you also must have seen that there was no poverty there. We used to have beggars coming from other states. We
Yes.
by in 47 there used to be local beggars, and by the time we were born and we grew up in 80s, we never found a local beggar. They didn't have beggars, local beggars whom they could give zakat to, the charity which is supposed to be given in Islam to poor people. So there were no local beggars to give. So the money was pumped in per capita allocation of funds was 2 to 3 times of what was given to Bihar. All this is data is available in the if
Right.
somebody just does research, you will get it. And there have been books written about this also.
In fact, I have myself seen slums for the first time after we moved out of Kashmir. In Jammu, yes, there used to be slums, but in Kashmir, we were totally unaware of that. So that was one. The other myth is that Mr. Jagmohan, the ex-governor of JNK, who made was the one who made Kashmiri Pandits to flee to ensure their safety, and then he brought the army into the valley. What do you have to say about that?
So I would say it is one of the ways you deny a genocide. There are 10 stages of genocide. The 10th stage is the denial, which we are still in currently, including the Nadav Lapid episode. So this is one of the ploys of denying genocide. You just put the responsibility onto somebody else and just keep on perpetuating that. The thing about that society is that it's a very regimentalized society out there. So you will see only one type of narrative, that you talk to anybody, you will say Jagmohan threw you out. If they talk to somebody else, they will tell them, so Jagmohan threw them out, I mean took them out, we were not involved. If anybody deviates from this narrative, he will be practically excommunicated. He can't survive in the society. Whereas in our community, there are people, different voices. Even if their voice totally falsehood also, they will never be thrown out of the society. So there are many voices from our society, but from their side, there's only one voice. That is one narrative that Jagmohan orchestrated all this thing, which is so, even on the face of it, it is so stupid, in the sense people just don't leave their 5,000-year-old homes just because one person tells them that you leave. Even the if you see, when the Jewish Holocaust was happening, very Jews had intellectuals like Sigmund Freud and all. Even they did not leave their homes, even though their relatives were telling to come. There was all around genocide happening them, but around him, but he didn't leave. He was he's a towering intellect. So it is foolish, first of all, on the face of it also to tell this, but they have been unfortunately so successful in pushing that it is almost became mainstream, till it was debunked and challenged.
What was your motivation for writing this book? What triggered
Okay,
the
so
idea?
yeah, so actually, exactly this thing itself. I was in Kochi and I was in a Jewish town there. There's a place called Matancherry, and very interestingly, it's a tourist location, and there's a Jewish synagogue there. And interestingly, 80% of the shops are owned by Kashmiri Muslims there. So I happened to meet a very nice, gentle-looking person there who was born in '93, a Kashmiri Muslim. So I started a conversation with him in Kashmiri, and I purposefully, tried to avoid going into all the things which were the turmoil, the terror which is happening there. I didn't want to touch that. I was just asking him about his business and all. All of a sudden, he blurted out the same Jagmohan story. So that shook me. I knew, all of us know this Jagmohan myth which is being propagated, so that they don't have to face the responsibility for what they did. And then I realized, how successfully they had. I don't blame that boy. He was born in '93. After we had left, we were forced to leave. But the conviction with which he said this Jagmohan story, I realized that how successfully his elders have poisoned his mind and planted that falsehood. Imagine when your own elders are poisoning your mind, then who can save you?
See, that's how the narratives die, the newer generations come and new ideas planted, and people who are actually aware of what happened, they are no more there. But I think the books like the one that you've written, they stay there forever, and that's the reason why we need them. In your book, you have not just spoken about the decades of 80s or 90s. You've gone back several decades in time to highlight very small details about the society and the social behavior in general, which over time led to the genocide. It obviously didn't happen in a day. One major factor was that of the sexual harassment. You have written about the episode of 1947 when some women of your family were asked to consume poison to save, their honor. Uh, can you just describe that to us?
So, since childhood, I had heard about this story, and it had always touched my heart. And it was a very sad and a very tragic tale to hear. So, when I started writing the book, I specifically asked my father to give me details about this episode, and the idea was, you know, genocide is not one-off incident. You have to prepare the society over decades, sometimes over centuries.
True.
First, you have to vilify a people to the extent that they are, thought of as subhuman. So when somebody is subhuman, then attacking them, burning their property, killing them, kidnapping their women, raping their women becomes probably easy. So that's why I wanted to highlight these incidents to show that that there was a mindset which was there, and we need to fight the mindset. The people are nice. Everybody is born, and he's born, is divine as per our ideology. Everybody is divine, but it is the software which we upload into that mind. A child born has a blank mind, and when you upload a certain type of software, he behaves in a certain way. So early on, only when you poison the minds, then later on genocide has to happen. So the reason for highlighting this event was to show the sufferings and the kind of environment Kashmiri Hindus had to face right from 47.
In
In fact,
fact,
before,
later
it's a
also,
7th century old story actually, but
yeah, this was the seventh Exodus, and this is not for the first time. Even you see during the Afghan rule, also there are women who jumped into the river or jumped into the wells and killed themselves to save themselves. And the same thing happened in 1990 also. We have many examples of whether it is Sarla Bhatt or Girja Tikku, and though some of it was also shown in the movie The Kashmir Files, but they were not, they didn't show it very clearly. But that has been the case, and even the thing that they said, uh, that the announcements that were made, or the newspaper announcements that you should leave your woman behind, uh, the Kashmiri Hindu men should leave, leaving their women behind. So, you didn't need bullets to actually make this exodus happen. And that is something which you have highlighted in your book. And there is so much more, which talks about how the ethnic cleansing can happen over a very long period of time. There are some seemingly very small incidents which you have highlighted in the book about your school environment, about the difficulty in celebrating festivals or applauding India's victory in a cricket match against Pakistan. And these are the incidents which are highly suppressive of a person's right to live um, in a democracy. So, can you tell us something more about this?
Yeah, so my purpose of highlighting these incidents of child asking certain questions or an adolescent making certain comments about religious icons about a religion to highlight that it is again the same point. Genocide doesn't happen in one night. It is not Jagmohan who comes and says now leave and we leave. You are first stifled, your freedom is stifled, you are suppressed by attacking your religion, and the idea is to show that your religion is inferior and you are basically inferior people. You remain within your limits or else. So such incidents, like one of our classmates getting up and saying that Shankaracharya atop there was a mosque, and Hindus have destroyed that mosque and built a temple. Everybody knows that that temple is ancient. It predates even Islam, perhaps. So at least the
Yes.
site. So I mean, so such myths, and such untruth being told, and then making fun of your religion, it basically puts you on the defensive always, and you don't want to get into trouble with them. So the when you poison children's minds so early that they see their identity in certain religion rather than in a ethnicity or in a country, so you were bound to have a society which will eventually use violence also.
True. So, you have mentioned in your book an incident where your relative got his salary, but there was no tax cut because jihadis had ordered that Indian government does not deserve to be paid taxes. And this definitely tells a lot about the hand in glove association of the terrorists with the government machinery at that time. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, it is unbelievable. If you tell people here whose our taxes are cut right from TDS, it is unbelievable. They won't even believe that such things happen. But this
Such
is
kind
how.
of a control they had.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is that's why this was incident I had highlighted. This shows the kind of grip anti-nationals had over last 7 decades, established over the administration, that their people were everywhere. So when the terrorists came in, they could just tell shout out a lot order and it would be followed, because the mindset was there. There were people with a certain mindset sitting at different posts. So terrorists
Right.
just had to tell them, and they're already tuned in last 7 decades to do behave in a certain way. So imagine that shows the absolute collapse of administration, in the sense they don't want to give taxes because it goes to the central government. And imagine, not paying electricity bills. I mean, here we pay bills through our noses. People are, such huge bills they come, and there, and during that time, people were, boycotting and not paying electricity bills, and yet they were getting electricity. That means the people who were supplying electricity also were hand in glove. They were continued. They didn't cut the connections because they were also in league with this whole. So the whole system had got infiltrated, and it's a classical example. If our country, our nation has to learn something, that in any state, and more so in a border state, you can't allow infiltration of your administrative setup by people who are anti-nationals. Otherwise, you are doomed. And that's what happened. There was Jagmohan ji came on 19th, and he was in Jammu. He had not yet come to Srinagar. He took oath in Jammu, and he started getting phone calls. This is mentioned in his book. And he couldn't do anything because the administration was totally collapsed. Nobody was there to listen to his orders. We
Yes.
think Jagmohan comes and governor comes and he immediately starts getting control over. No, the situation was such that there was no administration left. Nobody was listening to orders. Police was not following your orders. One of the Jagmohan ji appointed one advisor who next day told him, "I can't be your advisor because I'm scared." So
In
there was
fact,
this.
when Jagmohan ji joined in Srinagar, there was no one in his office to make tea for him. That is what
Yes,
we
yes,
have
yes,
also mentioned in the Chronicles of Kashmir
yes, yes, yes,
about
correct.
how he came and there was no one to make tea for him. That's true. So when we say, all these narratives, when they say that, there are these terrorists who are uh, creating the violence, and then there are other people who are the victims. But here we see that the government machinery itself is hand in glove with them. So what is the distinction then between where do we draw a line that there are few people who are terrorists and there are others who are suffering? The
So
classic, yeah.
it's a very thin line, and I think actually there's no line. So again, referring to Jagmohan Ji's book, he mentions the case of a terrorist who was actually a government employee, and when he was engaged in terrorism, he was also getting his salary. So who was a terrorist, who was not a terrorist in 8990? At least that is the period we talk about mostly in the book. We don't know.
Yeah.
It was a very thin line. That was the scary part. That's why neighbors could not be trusted. There were neighbors who, some of them who had sent, whose kids had gone for training. So that's what I mentioned in the book also. It was very difficult to make out who will pick up a weapon and who would not. But then the society as a whole was geared towards supporting terrorism. So the society cannot. That's why the title and the valley remained silent. The society remained silent and looked other way. So the society cannot be absolved of this responsibility. They are equally culpable.
You have actually mentioned, you talked about a silent elite, an educated group of majority community who watched the persecution silently. You have talked about that in the book. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So what I have said is that there was a silent majority in which there was a violent minority. So that, of course, the terrorists were a very minuscule numbers, in very minuscule numbers, but there was a silent majority who gave you know uh, who gave support to this whole endeavor. So that is more important, because see, terrorism, why there is no terrorism, can't why terrorism can't take root in Jammu, why terrorism can't take root in Delhi or other places, because
Yes.
it needs a ecosystem where, when the terrorist kills or fires at the armed forces, the terrorist runs and takes refuge.
Yes.
Unless the terrorist needs food, he needs rest. Who gives those things?
The hideouts.
Yeah.
In fact, I have heard one story. That these street vendors there who sell vegetables, they would when they saw the defense forces on the ground, they would sing loud in Kashmiri language and say that someone is coming, please hide. Now the defense forces, they did not understand Kashmiri language, so that's the kind of support which is actually required to sustain and support this kind of a terrorism.
Correct.
You've also touched upon the things such as cheating in education, which was very much supported by the terrorists. And things like these were making the system hollow and leaving no place for Kashmiri Hindus to hope for decent education and a life ahead in Kashmir due to favoritism in professional education. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, so I heard from my father, and I know of cases where students would many people from our community would get top ranks amongst top 20 in the valley, but they could not manage a seat in the engineering college or a medical college, because the list was manipulated by the top government people, including chief minister. So then those guys went to court and fought, and there are court records. If somebody does you know deep research and look at it, there are court records in Supreme Court and High Court where they will find judgments given in favor of our people who were deserving students and who were denied. So there was it was a deep-seated malady where you were basically being, as you said, they didn't even need bullets. They were already pushing us out by
Yeah.
by different strategies.
Yeah, that's what you have highlighted in your book. Like, it's not just the bullets that you need. So one day somebody shoots and people run away. It was not that. That's what in the entire book you have shown those incidents which led people to actually as you rightly said, use the words, making them subhuman slowly, and also um, uh, putting obstacles in their way to prosper and grow in the state. And one of the classic examples is that of the education, where you don't give them opportunities. You don't give students the opportunity to become a doctor, to become an engineer. Most of the things happen in those professional institutions. You have also mentioned how various ancient scriptures from abandoned and forcefully occupied Kashmiri Pandit homes were sold as scrap, and then someone bought it at a cheap price and made it into his business by selling the same to foreign researchers. Again, this was yet another act to wipe off the signs of existence of an ethnic community which existed. Please tell us something about that.
So it is very akin to what the Nazis did with the Jews. They stole their properties. They stole paintings, call it, such things, manuscripts, paintings from them, and then they made museums out of that. And same thing was done with us. We know many of the things looted from our houses was sold in the by the on the roads as scrap, and some of that was bought by people at throwaway prices. And one incident I mentioned, that guy sets up a museum, and the person who gave me this account said I was happy that at least it was being preserved. But then when he dug deeper, he realized that it was not, the intention was not to preserve it. Intention was to make money out of it, because there was a demand from the foreign researchers who wanted, Western researchers who wanted material on, we have such rich tradition in Kashmir, of Trika philosophy and other so many things. So it's a typical genocidal loot. It is part of the whole genocide process, where you are given a carrot, and you're told, if you get rid of this person, not only will you be more comfortable, and his property also becomes yours. So
Absolutely.
it was, forget about the manuscripts. Our houses were, still many houses of my relatives are illegally occupied even today. Many are burnt, many are cannibalized. So they not only forced us out, they also are enjoying the spoils of that, the booty, the war booty.
And on top of it, after the Roshni Act came in, all that was legitimized also. Those occupations of the
Yes,
abandoned homes, they could get the homes for few hundred rupees written in their names.
yes,
Um,
yes.
Now, another question is, what is the message that you wish to give through this book for the India at large?
Yeah, so there were two reasons for writing this book. One was for our next generation to know that we didn't leave just because Jagmohan told us to leave. So I have very amply showed many instances how people left under different circumstances. So that was one. And secondly, I also wanted the rest of the country to understand what is the template at work, to be aware that such a template should not be used elsewhere in the country and against any community, irrespective of religion. Against any community, such template should not be used to throw out a minority or a majority, whatever. So there are places in our country where these are hot spots where I have apprehension that this same template is being used and will be used. But whether people are aware of that, I'm not sure. But that was one of the reasons. They should understand. It's not only, see, what has happened to us has happened. We will fight for it, and we will make people aware about it. But there is a lesson to learn for our country at large. Otherwise, our civilization is at threat.
The
So
template
we
that
should,
you're talking about, yeah,
the
the
template I'm
template
talking
that
about is the kind of software, the ideologies people are like. I'll give you an example. When the Taliban came way back first time in Afghanistan, there was a viral video. I saw a viral video of that around later on. It came, and in that the Taliban had caught a spy, a Mughbir, and instead of the adults killing him, they called in a 11, 12-year-old boy and gave him a knife, and the adults had pinned him down, and they gave the knife to to the boy and told him to slit his throat. Now what are you doing? You are uploading a certain kind of software into child that it is okay to kill a person. Now such a person, you, it is very, very difficult to, get him back as a normal human being. He will, this type of a person will, by and large, mostly become a violent person, and you see where Afghanistan is landed now. So such kind of, such kind of software being uploaded, that there is a community, these non-believers are, are subhuman. It is okay to kill them if they, don't listen to you. Relive galit saliv. Either you convert, or run away, or we will kill you. So this is the kind of template which was used there.
So one was this indoctrination that you're talking about, right from the young age, and then several social behaviors which made it impossible for the people from the minority community to lead a dignified life. Say for example, the safety of their women, or desecration of the temples, or not even allowing you to celebrate if India wins a cricket match against Pakistan. So you cannot express yourself. So those are the things that you have described very well through the real life experiences of people, about how over so many decades uh, it made people feel subhuman, as you use that term. And then 1990 was the culmination of all this and the mass exodus. So the exodus did not happen in just one day. Now, one last question that I want to ask you. You just told me that you never went to Kashmir um, since 1990. Why?
So I get often asked this question, and the reason is, I am so emotionally attached to my motherland that I can't even think of going as a tourist there. When you go as a tourist to some place, you go and enjoy. How can I enjoy a place where I was forced to leave, where I wanted to spend the rest of my life, and even now I want to spend the rest of my life in that place? How can I go as a tourist there? So
I
I made
can.
sure, yeah. So I made sure that, and one more thing, I didn't want, that my money should go to people who support terrorists. There are good people, so I can't make out who are the good ones or the bad ones. But you never know. There, in one of the books which was written from Valley a few years back, the author mentions, he's a Kashmiri Muslim author. He has mentioned that there were terrorists who were coming as shawlwalas in Delhi and North India. Many shawlwalas are roaming around. You never know who has a what background. And this was, I was shocked because it was mentioned in one of the books. So that is one aspect, you don't know. And secondly, it's very painful to go back and see your house being occupied by somebody, or see your temples desecrated, or just simply to go as a tourist to your, I got sometimes opportunities for conferences, everybody, I could have easily gone, but I refused to go because it's very painful.
I can very much relate to what you're saying, because I was myself, in 1990, I was in the first year of my college, and um I didn't visit Kashmir till this October 2022. After 32 years, I visited. And my experience was the same, that, if I have to enjoy the natural beauty, this is not the place, because I pass by my house, but I know that I'm not going to live there. I have to live in a hotel. That's the worst feeling that any person can encounter. and you go there after 32 years, and you see that uh, there is nothing over there that can accommodate you. The place that you had left has already been filled. Your homes, they've been occupied. You go to your temples, and they are silent. There is nobody there. Some of them have been destroyed. So I've heard many people saying now Kashmir is fine. Everything is good there. It's peaceful. Probably you guys don't want to go back because you are already making your living here, and you don't want to. You are living comfortable lives. But the thing is that you are uprooted once, and you take decades to put your feet on the ground, and uh, recollect yourself. And then when you go back to that place and you see that everything has been replaced. uh, it's hard to go to a place where you belonged as a tourist. So that was my last question to you. Thank you so much. It was an amazing talk. And I would like to hand over to Mr. Shankar.
No, that is very painful discussions. I could see you couldn't smile at all during this. And I was really shocked to hear you didn't visit after 1990. And after writing the book like this, I think it's going to be haunting you more, going back and seeing. Yeah, I have to say this, when I travel from Chennai, I'm in a different location now in South India. Elderly couple traveled with me. Obviously, they are all familiar. They are in their mid 80s or early 80s. They moved to the US some 40 years ago, and they came back there. They just came here to renew all their acquaintances and the places, and everything remains same. They can move around with the same people. They can recollect and then visit the temples, visit all the places. Like Rohini ji was mentioning, that's all missing in your case. You can go back, but nothing you can relate.
Nothing
Rohini was
exists.
telling me last time, um, everything is protected. Everything is very calm, quiet. So it's so painful hearing all this. So I can only compare this elderly couple coming, after 40 years, can really merge with the population here. So even though they left speaking the language, they can at least go back to like 3 or 4 generations, and people still recognize. He's a very successful attorney in the US, and his father was a practicing lawyer here in the early 30s or 40s. That is missing for Kashmir.
True.
And also, you touched upon this template. That template is very much alive with regional versions all over in India. I think lesson that we should learn from reading a book and listening to even our series to identify these templates. I'm sure government is working on it. It's very, very important. No assurance that it cannot happen elsewhere. There are signs in quite a few locations. I'm sure you are aware of what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
One more thing, Doctor, I was thinking, if your books will end up in libraries and in different parts of India with the regional translation, you
Yes, sir.
know, yeah, otherwise people will not know. Unless it lands with, translations into local languages. And there is one library in this town dating back to 1895. Yeah, it's called Gopal Rao Library. It's got a lot of books, even Kashmir. I go and refer some books on Kashmir. Sanskrit books are there. Um, in fact, some of the books written by Advaita Vajini Kaul's grandfather books are here. And your books should be here with the regional, local Tamil translation for people to read and understand what happened. Otherwise, it will be localized and only we talk in the media. the narratives will continue like this.
Absolutely, sir. It
I,
should not be limited to the English speaking because the book will otherwise remain. The message should has to go deeper. Just remaining within the English speaking gentry is not going to serve the purpose of the book. So currently, I am working on the Kannada, version of it. I mean, one reputed writer who has written 50 Kannada books. He and I are collaborating, and we just started the Kannada translation. Hopefully, that should come out, and I think we should look at other languages also.
now you should consider Tamil. Now we
Yes,
have a
yes,
huge following in Tamil, and I even start writing in Tamil in Twitter about our program.
yes, sir.
So you should consider Tamil also. There are some Tamil-speaking Kashmiri Pandits.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, Madam, Garyali IAS is very fluent in Tamil.
yes,
And
yes.
Dr. Beena Butki has done some work in translating Tirukkural.
Oh, oh,
Yes, you should consider doing that. And you have a nice title for your book because our local newspaper translated so well. And the Tamil translation appears to be better than your English one.
thank you, sir.
I can
Thank
only
you.
understand that. You check with some of your friends. So it has been very
Yes,
interesting,
yes.
and thank you so much. And
Thank you, sir.
hopefully you come out of all this and go back to Kashmir one day and renew all your acquaintances like we see people here.
Yes, sir. Yes,
I hope that day comes, is going to come one day.
yes. Let us hope for the best, sir.
Thank you so much again, Rohini ji, for taking care of this.
Thank you.
The book reviews are very
Thank you.
important because all these books are well researched. And I think we should continue doing one book every month. And I'm sure you have thousands of books,
Sure.
right? About
Yes, indeed.
Kashmiri experience. Let's do that, and please work on this translation also.
Yeah,
We
yes,
can
yes. I think
we
so.
can ask our local newspaper to publish about this book. Once it's in Tamil.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll look forward
Namaskar.
to seeing you again.
Same here. Looking forward. Bye.
Thank you, Doctor. Well, thank you, listeners. It's been very interesting in discussion. As I mentioned, the book reviews are very, very important, and they are well researched and with facts, uh, well checked and cross-checked and done so well, just like that movie, Kashmiri Files that we saw. We will continue to do this book review session, and you can always keep in touch with me if you want any book to be highlighted. We'd like to do at least once in a month or once in every 2 months. As a program now, it's fortnightly. We don't meet every Saturday. We meet every other Saturday. As always, we want to thank Kanchi Mutt channels, YouTube, Facebook, Kamakodi.tv, and not to forget our VDSP for all the streaming support as they have been doing from day one. And Dinamalar, as I mentioned earlier, India's only leading Tamil newspaper, covers our programs every week. Usually they publish by Thursday, Friday, or Saturday about our program. And this time they have done a wonderful translation of the title of the book, "And the Valley Remains Silent." So uh, please stay tuned for our future programs. We'll be meeting in 2 weeks again with another interesting topic on Kashmir. Till we meet again, Jai Jai Shankara. Hare Hare Shankara.